are bound together by our shared values of freedom, equality, democracy, the right to live free from fear, and our common aspirations for a future of peace, security, and prosperity, where we can see our children and our children's children, should we be so lucky. And as a future mother of the bride, I'm certainly hoping for that.
Yes, Chelsea!
To see those children, those generations, come of age in peace, with the opportunity to fulfill their own God-given potentials. Americans honor Israel as a homeland for a people too long oppressed, and a democracy that has had to defend itself at every turn. A dream nurtured for generations and made real by men and women who refused to bow to the toughest of odds. In Israel's story, we see our own. We see, in fact, the story of all people who struggle for freedom and the right to chart their own destinies. That's why it took President Hilary only 11 minutes to recognize the new nation of Israel. And ever since, our two countries have stood in solidarity. So guaranteeing Israel's security is more than a policy position for me. It is a personal commitment that will never waver. Since my first visit to Israel nearly 30 years ago, I have returned many times and made many friends. I've had the privilege of working with some of Israel's great leaders and have benefited from their wise counsel. I may have even caused some of them consternation. I don't think Yitzhak Rabin ever forgave me for banishing him to the White House balcony when he wanted to smoke. And over the years, I have shared your pride in seeing the desert bloom, the economy thrive, and the country flourish. But I've also seen the struggles and the sorrows. I have met with the victims of terrorism in their hospital rooms. I've held their hands. I've listened to the doctors describe how much shrapnel was left in a leg, an arm, or a head. I sat there and listened to the heart-rending words that Prime Minister Rabin's granddaughter Noah spoke at her grandfather's funeral. I went to a bombed-out pizzeria in Jerusalem. I've seen the looks on the faces of Israeli families who knew a rocket could fall at any moment. On one of my visits in 2002, I met a young man named Yochai Porat. He was only 26, but he was already a senior medic with MDA, and he oversaw a program to train foreign volunteers as first responders in Israel. I attended the program's graduation ceremonies, and I saw the pride in his face as yet another group of young people set off to do good and save lives. Yochai was also a reservist with the IDF, and a week after we met, he was killed by a sniper near a roadblock, along with other soldiers and civilians. MDA renamed the Overseas Volunteer Program in his memory, and it has continued to flourish. When I was there in 2005, I met with his family. his parents were committed to continuing to support MDA and its mission, and so was I. That's why I spent years urging the International Red Cross, introducing legislation, rounding up votes to send a message to Geneva to admit MDA as a full voting member. And finally, with your help in 2006, we succeeded in fighting back the wall. As a senator from New York, I was proud to be a strong voice for Israel in the Congress and around the world, and I am proud that I can continue to be that strong voice as Secretary of State. Last fall, I stood next to Prime Minister Netanyahu in Jerusalem and praised his government's decision to place a moratorium on new residential construction in the West Bank. And then I praised it again in Cairo and in Marrakesh and in many places far from Jerusalem to make clear that this was a first step, but it was an important first step. And yes, I underscored the long-standing American policy that does not accept the legitimacy of continued settlements. As Israel's friend, it is our responsibility to give credit when it is due and to tell the truth when it is needed. In 2008, I told this conference that Barack Obama would be a good friend to Israel as president, that he would have a special appreciation of Israel because of his own personal history, a grandfather who fought the Nazis in Patton's army, a great uncle who helped liberate Buchenwald. President Obama and his family have lived the diaspora experience, and as he told you himself, he understands that there is always a homeland at the center of our story. As a senator, he visited Israel and met families whose houses were destroyed by rockets. And as president, he has supported Israel in word and in deed. Under President Obama's leadership, we have reinvigorated defense consultations, redoubled our efforts to ensure Israel's qualitative military edge, and provided nearly $3 billion in annual military assistance. In fact, as Rosie told you, or maybe it was Howard, that assistance increased in 2010, and we have requested another increase for 2011. And something else I want you to know. More than 1,000 United States troops participated in the Juniper Cobra ballistic missile defense exercises last fall, the largest such drill ever held. President Obama has made achieving peace and recognized secure borders for Israel a top administration priority. The United States has also led the fight in international institutions against anti-Semitism and efforts to challenge Israel's legitimacy. We did lead the boycott of the Durban Conference, and we repeatedly voted against the deeply flawed Goldstone report. For Israel's right to defend itself.